June 4th, 1942. For 30 hours, 200 miles north of Midway Atoll, the Pacific is unnaturally calm. Carrier decks glisten under red signal lights, steel slick with salt and condensation. Engines cough to life in the half-dark, a low mechanical growl vibrating through the hulls. Somewhere in the distance, waves slap against armor plating with a slow, indifferent rhythm. Above, the sky is a pale bruise, night retreating inch by inch. On the flight deck of USS Enterprise, sailors move without speaking. Boots thud softly. Hand signal. A wrench clatters, then freezes mid-fall, caught before it can echo. Everyone knows sound travels far over water. You can smell it. Aviation fuel, oil, sweat. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey stands near his aircraft, helmet tucked under his arm, eyes fixed on the horizon. His SBD Dauntless dive bomber squats on the deck like a predatory bird, bomb locked beneath its belly, wings folded tight. The plane is already warm, alive, impatient. No one is talking about fear. No one is talking about doubt. But it's there, far to the west, beyond the curvature of the earth. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's fleet is moving with ceremonial precision. For carriers, Akagi Kaga Soryu Hiryu, the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy, veterans of Pearl Harbor, their decks hum with confidence earned through 6 months of uninterrupted victory. To them, this is not a gamble. It is a closing act. They believe the Americans are predictable. They believe the Americans are slow. They believe the Americans will come straight at them and die. On Akagi, Vice Admiral Chuchi Nagumo watches the sky brighten through binoculars, posture composed, expression unreadable. His carrier strike force is executing a textbook operation. Midway will be softened. American carriers, if they appear, will be annihilated in sequence. Doctrine, order, control. At 4:30, Nagumo give the order. Launch the first wave. Engines roar across 4 flight decks as A-6M0 fighters, B-5 NK torpedo bombers, and D-3A Val dive bombers surge forward, lifting into the dawn like a swarm of steel insects. Their mission is clear: bomb Midway into irrelevance. The American carriers can wait. For now, back on Midway Atoll, radar operators sit hunched in the dim interior station Opana, eyes fixed on a green glowing scope. The hum of electronics fills the room. Then a flicker, a blip, another. One operator leans closer. The screen blooms with returns. Multiple contacts, he says, voice tight. Bearing 320. The warning goes out. Sirens wail across the atoll. Marines sprint for positions. Anti-aircraft guns elevate. PBY Catalina patrol planes already in the air bank hard. Radios crackling with urgent transmissions. The Japanese strike is coming in low and fast. And still, out beyond the horizon, the American carriers wait unseen. On USS Hornet, Lieutenant Commander John Waldron paces beside his TBD Devastator torpedo planes. The aircraft are obsolete. Everyone knows it. Slow, poorly armored. Almost no chance against modern fighters. Waldron knows it too. He doesn't flinch. His men trust him. He has drilled them hard. He has argued with superiors. He has made himself unpopular for one reason. When the moment comes, he intends to fly straight toward the enemy, regardless of orders if necessary. Because somewhere out there, the Japanese carriers exist. And today they must be found. At 7 o'clock, the order finally arrives. Launch all aircraft. Deck crews explode into motion. Engines scream. Catapults fire. One by one, American planes claw into the sky. Fighters, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, climbing into formation over the vast blue nothingness. There is no unified strike. No elegant plan. Aircraft from Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown scatter across different headings, different altitudes, different ideas of where the enemy might be. Radio discipline fractures. Fuel ticks down second by second. This is not precision. This is instinct. Down below, the carriers shrink to toy ships on a painted ocean. Pilots scan endlessly, eyes burning, neck stiff, hands tight on controls. Every cloud looks like smoke. Every shimmer might be awake. Time stretches. Then, on the Japanese carriers, everything begins to go subtly wrong. Nagumo receives conflicting reports. Midway is not neutralized. A second strike is required. Then, a fragmentary contact report from a scout plane. Delayed, vague, incomplete. Enemy force, possibly carriers. Nagumo hesitates. Planes already on deck are armed for land targets. Bombs must be swapped for torpedoes. Then another message arrives, contradicting the first. The deck crews rush. Weapons are moved. Fuel lines snake across the deck. Aircraft are pushed, pulled, reconfigured. The decks of the four carriers become crowded, vulnerable, dangerous. Above them, Japanese fighters are drawn down, chasing American torpedo planes skimming the waves, slow, doomed, courageous. One by one, devastators are torn apart by Zeros and flak. They keep coming anyway. Smoke columns rise from the sea, and high above all of it, almost unnoticed, a handful of American dive bombers are still searching, low on fuel, out of position, and completely lost, until one pilot sees something in the water, a thin white line, a destroyer's wake, and follows it straight toward history. The wake cuts the sea like a scar. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey banks his SBD Dauntless, eyes locked on the thin white trail, slicing eastward across the Pacific. Below him, the lone Japanese destroyer Arisher is racing at flank speed, about punching water aside in violent bursts. No zigzag, no caution, running hard. McCluskey doesn't know why Arisher is late. He doesn't know it had been hunting an American submarine for hours, peeling away from the carrier screen, and now sprinting to rejoin the fleet. He only knows one thing. Destroyers don't run like this unless they're heading back to something important. Fuel gauges hover near empty. Radios hiss with static. The formation is thin now. Planes lost, scattered, turned back. He can feel the weight of the decision pressing against his ribs. Turn back, and they ditch at sea. Follow the wake, and they gamble everything. McCluskey pushes the nose down. The Dauntless engines respond with a strained, steady roar. One by one, the remaining dive bombers falling behind him, a ragged arrow pointed toward the unknown. Minutes pass. The ocean stretches endlessly, hypnotic, merciless. Sweat trickles down McCluskey's spine, despite the altitude. He scans for smoke, for shapes, for anything that breaks the geometry of water and sky. Then, there, dark specks on the horizon. Flat shapes, rectangular, moving, carriers, 4 of them. Below, the Japanese fleet is in chaos without realizing it. On Akagi's flight deck, crews rush aircraft into position. Bombs sit stacked beside torpedoes. Fuel hoses lie coiled and uncoiled, slick with gasoline. Fighters land low on fuel, engines coughing, pilots waving frantically for deck space. Every square meter of steel is crowded. Vice Admiral Nagumo stands on the bridge, jaw tight. He has chosen to rearm for a second strike on Midway. It is the correct decision, on paper. But the timing is wrong, and timing is everything. The combat air patrol is scattered at low altitude, still engaged with American torpedo planes that refuse to die quietly. Down at wave-top height, VT-8, VT-6, VT-3 have been shredded. Lieutenant Commander John Waldron's squadron from Hornet is nearly gone. Planes explode into fireballs as Zeros rake them from behind. Devastators plow into the sea, leaving nothing but oil slicks and debris. They score no hits. Not one, but they pull the Japanese fighters down. They keep them there. High above, unseen, the sky is suddenly empty. At 10:22 hours, McCluskey rolls his Dauntless inverted. The world flips. The carriers fill the windscreen. Kaga first, enormous, exposed, flight deck cluttered with aircraft armed and fueled. Tiny figures scatter below as alarms scream too late. Tracers streak upward, thin and desperate. McCluskey releases. The bomb drops away, spinning, whistling, shrinking, then slams to a flight deck near the forward elevator. A white flash, then fire. Almost simultaneously, Lieutenant Dick Best peels off toward Akagi, aiming not at the center, but at the island. An impossible shot. His bomb punches through the deck near the aft elevator, detonating among fueled aircraft. Akagi erupts. On Kaga, multiple bombs strike in rapid succession. Explosions race across the deck like lightning trapped under steel. Planes lift, flip, disintegrate. Flames leap from elevator wells, feeding on aviation gasoline. On Soryu, bombs tear through hangars packed with armed aircraft. The carrier lurches, lists, disappears behind a wall of smoke. In less than 5 minutes, 3 Japanese fleet carriers are burning beyond control. Below decks, sailors fight fires with bare hands and rags. Ammunition cooks off. Bulkheads warp. Orders are shouted, drowned, repeated. Ignored. The heat becomes unbearable. Men leap into the sea to escape the inferno. Nagumo watches from the bridge of Akiji as his flagship dies beneath him. This was not in the plan. This was not how empires fall. Farther north, Hiryu survives. For now, her air group launches a counterstrike with disciplined fury. Dive bombers roar toward the American carriers, guided by veteran pilots who know exactly what this moment demands. They find USS Yorktown first. Bombs slam into the flight deck, tearing open steel, killing crews, igniting fires. The ship shudders but does not stop. Damage control parties move with practiced speed, sealing compartments, rerouting power, smothering flames. Within an hour, Yorktown looks operational again. The Japanese pilots report her sunk. They are wrong. Hiryu launches again, torpedo bombers this time. They find Yorktown once more. 2 torpedoes slam into her port side, flooding compartments, killing engines. The carrier lists heavily, dead in the water. This time, there is no illusion. Yorktown is finished, but the cost has been catastrophic. Hiryu is alone, and the Americans are already climbing back into the sky. A final group of dive bombers lifts off from Enterprise and Yorktown, surviving aircraft, forming up silently, grimly, with one remaining target ahead. On Hiryu's deck, fighters land, refuel, rearm. Crewmen work fast, faster than thought, faster than fear. They believe they have struck back. They believe balance has been restored. They do not look up. They do not see the sun disappear behind falling wings. And when they finally do, it is already too late. June 4th, 1942. Late afternoon. North Pacific skies, streaked with smoke. The sun hangs high, glaring off the water like a witness that refuses to look away. High above Hiryu, American dive bombers level off. Engines throttle back, formations tightening instinctively. These pilots have already seen what fire can do to a carrier deck today. They know what waits below. Lieutenant Dusty Kleiss adjusts his goggles. His SBD Dauntless trembles in thin air, wings humming, bomb secure beneath the fuselage. He glances left, then right. Familiar faces. Tight mouths. No bravado left. This is the last one. Below them, Hiryu cuts through the Pacific, smoke trailing faintly from exhaust stacks. Her flight deck deceptively calm. Aircraft are spotted neatly now. Deck crews disciplined. Damage from earlier operations minimal. From the bridge, Captain Tomio Kaku believes he still has a chance. He doesn't know 3 carriers are already dying. He doesn't know the sky above him has become a trap. At 17,000 feet, the signal comes. Dive. The formation tips forward as one. Gravity takes over. The wind screams. The ocean rushes upward, filling the cockpit glass. Kleiss pushes a nose down, airspeed climbing past 250 knots. Then 300. Anti-aircraft fire erupts, black puffs blooming around a plunging aircraft, metal shards rattling against wings and fuselage. Tracers climb desperately. Too slow. Hiryu grows impossibly large. Individual crewmen are visible now, running, pointing, frozen in the open. Fighters scramble, but there is no altitude, no time. Kleiss steadies his dive, sweat blurring his vision. The carrier's red rising sun insignia swells beneath him. He waits, counts. 3, 2, 1. Release. The bomb drops free. Another follows. Then another. Explosions ripple across Hiryu's flight deck, tearing steel open like paper. One bomb punches through the forward elevator, detonating deep inside the hangar. Another ignites fueled aircraft mid-deck, sending a geyser of flame skyward. The carrier shudders. Fire races outward, unstoppable, feeding on fuel lines, bomb casings, aviation gas. Aircraft flip, smash, vanish inside roiling smoke. The deck becomes an inferno within seconds. Kleiss pulls out hard, blacking out briefly as the Dauntless claws back into the sky. When his vision clears, Hiryu is already lost behind a towering column of smoke. 4 carriers. 4. The Imperial Japanese Navy Strike Force. Its elite, its veterans, the architect of Pearl Harbor, has been annihilated in a single day. Below decks, Hiryu's sailors fight with hoses, buckets, bare hands. Ammunition cooks off with deafening cracks. Bulkheads glow red. The heat strips skin raw. Orders dissolve into chaos. By nightfall, the decision is made. Abandon ship. Destroyers pull alongside as men leap into the sea, uniforms aflame, faces scorched, hands blistered. Captain Kaku remains aboard until the end, standing rigid as the fires consume his command. In the darkness, torpedoes finish the job. Hiryu slips beneath the waves. Silence returns to the Pacific. For the Americans, the victory does not feel triumphant. It feels unreal. On USS Enterprise, deck crews move slowly, stunned. Pilots sit with helmets in their laps, staring at nothing. Some laugh softly. Some cry without sound. Many count the empty seats. The torpedo squadrons are gone. VT-8 is almost entirely dead. VT-6 shattered. VT-3 barely exists. Men who took off that morning never came back. Lieutenant Commander John Waldron is among them. No medals yet. No speeches. Just absence. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, back at Pearl Harbor, reads the first reports with measured calm. 3 carriers destroyed. Then 4. Japanese losses catastrophic. American losses heavy, but survivable. He understands immediately what this means. Japan cannot replace these carriers, cannot replace these pilots, cannot replace this moment. Across the Pacific, Admiral Yamamoto receives the news aboard Yamato. He listens in silence, face unreadable, hand resting on the railing. Months of planning, deception, and confidence have collapsed into ash. The operation is called off. The invasion of Midway is abandoned. The fleet turns west, carrying defeat home across an ocean that suddenly feels much larger. For the first time since 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy is retreating. The war does not end at Midway, not even close. But something fundamental has shifted. The initiative is gone. The myth of Japanese invincibility, carefully cultivated since Pearl Harbor, has been shattered in full view of the world. And somewhere in the wreckage, the Americans realize something else. They are not soft. They are not finished. And this war, this vast, brutal struggle, can be won. But victory has a price, and the bill has only begun to arrive. Night falls on June 4th, 1942. The Pacific swallows the sun without ceremony. Wreckage drifts where empires collided. Splintered planks, oil slicks, fragments of wings and lives. Fires still burn on the water's surface. Small islands of flame surrounded by endless black. The smell of fuel and smoke lingers, heavy and nauseating. Searchlights sweep the darkness. On American destroyers, sailors lean over rails, hauling survivors from the sea. Japanese and American alike, burned, shocked, silent. Some cling weakly to floating debris. Others drift past, faces turn skyward, already gone. No one cheers. On USS Enterprise, the flight deck is littered with empty tie-downs. Names are spoken softly, then not spoken again. A pilot stares at a helmet that will never be worn. A deckhand scrubs blood from non-skid steel, the stain stubborn, refusing to disappear. This victory has weight. Below decks, surgeons work under harsh lights. No time for anesthesia. No room for hesitation. Flesh is cut, shrapnel removed, teeth clench until jaws shake. Men scream once, then go quiet. Outwardly, the carriers live. Inwardly, they mourn. At dawn on June 5th, the battle resumes, not in the air, but in the hunt. Admiral Raymond Spruance orders pursuit. Japanese forces must not escape unscathed. Recon planes fan out over the horizon. scanning for survivors, stragglers, anything still afloat. They find one, the heavy cruiser Mikuma, crippled and lagging behind her sister ship Mogami, trails smoke like a wounded animal. American dive bombers descend once more, methodical now, precise. Bombs walk across her deck. Explosions tear her apart. Mikuma sinks. More men vanish into the sea. For the Japanese Navy, the disaster compounds. For the Americans, it feels almost mechanical. The emotional peak has already passed. This is cleanup. Back in Japan, the news is delayed, filtered, softened. Newspapers speak of severe engagements. Casualties are vague. Details are scarce. Families wait without knowing why their sons will never return. But within the Imperial Navy, there is no confusion. The truth is brutal. 4 fleet carriers, over 300 aircraft, the most experienced pilots in the Pacific, gone. Admiral Yamamoto convenes his staff in silence. Maps are rolled up. Plans are abandoned. The strategy that envisioned luring American carriers into a decisive ambush now lies in ruins. The imbalance he feared, industrial power versus finite skill, has arrived sooner than expected. Japan is now fighting a long war, and long wars favor America. At Pearl Harbor, Nimitz studies casualty lists. He recognizes names. He understands what the numbers hide. Victory has bought time, but time must be used wisely. Shipyards roar to life. Production schedules accelerate. New carriers are already sliding down slipways. New pilots are training. Fewer hours, less experience, but in overwhelming numbers. The equation has changed. In Washington, planners see it too. Midway is not just a win. It is permission. Permission to advance. Permission to bleed the enemy slowly, relentlessly, across thousands of miles of ocean. Guadalcanal is already being discussed. But the men who fought at Midway don't think in strategies or future campaigns. They think of the torpedo squadrons. They think of Waldron. They think of friends who flew straight into death, so others could strike unseen. The silence they left behind is louder than any explosion. And as the American carriers turn east, back toward Pearl Harbor, the sea closes over the battlefield. The Pacific looks unchanged, calm, vast, indifferent. But beneath the surface, history has shifted. One morning was enough to erase an empire's momentum. One gamble, born of instinct, sacrifice, and chance, has rewritten the war. And the men who survived know something the world has not yet grasped. This was only the beginning. June 6, 1942. Open Pacific. Westbound seas. The Japanese fleet moves under radio silence. What remains of it? Gray hulls cut through the water in tight formation, but the confidence is gone. No signal flag snapped in ceremony. No pilots lounge on deck rails. The carriers, the heart of the fleet, are missing, leaving a hollow space that no escort can fill. Aboard Yamato, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto stands alone on the bridge as dawn breaks. The sea ahead is empty. The sea behind is a grave. He does not look at the charts anymore. He already knows them by memory. For decades, Yamamoto had warned Japan's leaders that war with the United States would be decided by industry, not bravery. That America could absorb losses Japan never could. That a short, violent war was Japan's only chance. Midway was meant to be that war's climax. Instead, it has become its undoing. Messages arrive in fragments, confirmed losses, missing air groups, destroyed squadrons. Names of pilots Yamamoto personally promoted. Men he drank with, men he trusted. There will be no replacements like them. Back aboard USS Enterprise, the realization spreads more slowly. At first, there is only exhaustion. Pilots sleep where they sit. Deck crews collapse against bulkheads. The adrenaline fades, leaving shaking hands and hollow eyes. Then the numbers begin to circulate. 4 Japanese fleet carriers. 1 American carrier lost. The scale sinks in. Officers exchange glances that linger a second too long. They understand what this means, even if no one says it aloud. The balance of power in the Pacific has tilted. Hard. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, the Americans have not simply survived. They have dictated the outcome. Yet the mood remains restrained. No one forgets the cost. Entire squadrons are gone. The air wing rosters are scarred with empty lines. Victory feels fragile, as if celebrating might somehow cheapen the men who made it possible. Admiral Spruance keeps his tone measured in official communications. Enemy loss is severe. Own loss is acceptable. The words are precise, controlled. Nothing like the violence that produced them. Across the Pacific, Japanese sailors begin to understand the truth without being told. There are no carriers to land on. Pilots who survived Midway are reassigned ashore. Some stare at empty runways where decks should be. Others sit in silence, realizing their skills, once elite, will now be rationed, preserved, no longer spent freely. The Imperial Navy has lost its sword arm, and swords, once broken, are not easily reforged. In the United States, the news reaches the public days later. Headlines are cautious. Details are thin. But the message is unmistakable. The enemy can be beaten. In small towns and cities, families read between the lines. Relief mixes with dread. If the war can be won, it will still demand more sons, more ships, more sacrifice. Midway has opened a door. No one yet knows how much blood lies beyond it. As the American carriers approach Pearl Harbor, crews line the rails. The harbor comes into view. Cranes, docks, mountains rising behind the base that once burned. This time, they return as victors. But victory has sharpened expectations. Now, the war will not be about survival. It will be about advance. And advance means confrontation. Somewhere far to the southwest, an island chain waits. Dense jungle, shallow waters, and an airfield under construction. A name not yet famous. Guadalcanal. And the men who won at Midway are about to learn that turn the tide is not the same as ending the storm. June 7, 1942. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Morning haze clings to the harbor like smoke that refuses to leave. The USS Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown glide into the docks, their hulls streaked with salt and soot. Decks still bear scorch marks from frantic launches and emergency recoveries. Crews step onto solid ground, but their boots barely make a sound. The weight of what they have seen presses down heavier than any cargo. Corpsmen and medics move quickly. Bandages are replaced. Burns treated. Eyes hollow, staring into nothing, reflect the flickering flames of memories burned into sky over Midway. Pilots who survived look at empty rows of planes on their decks and remember the friends who never returned. Names are whispered. Faces flash behind closed eyelids. Every man knows someone is missing. VT 8, VT 6, VT 3, almost erased from history. Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, missing, is mourned before news confirms it. His squadron's absence leaves a silence that no applause can fill. Sailors shuffle past the empty bunks. Mechanics clean gear that may never fly again. The hull itself seems to sag, burdened by what it carries. Admiral Nimitz walks along the docks. His face is composed, yet his eyes betray comprehension. Midway has been a triumph, but at what cost? He knows the enemy has been shattered, but he also knows the Americans' courage came at a price measured in human lives. Victory and grief are inseparable. Across the Pacific, Japanese survivors drift in the water, clinging to wreckage. Some are rescued by destroyers. Others are left behind. Exhaustion turns to despair as they watch columns of smoke rise, where their fleet once dominated the horizon. The psychological weight is immediate. This is not just defeat. It is humiliation. Confidence, arrogance, and planning have evaporated in minutes. Back on USS Enterprise, pilots gather for debriefings. Some are quiet. Some stare at the sky through weary eyes. Debriefing officers go over targets, hits, and missed opportunities. No one speaks of heroism. Heroism is meaningless here. What matters is survival, and even survival feels incomplete. The Americans realize that Midway is not the end. The enemy, though broken, still exists. The Pacific is vast. The Imperial Japanese Navy has the ability to regroup, to strike again, to fight with desperation and cunning. The memory of Pearl Harbor is fresh, and yet the survivors know Midway has changed the rules of engagement. For the first time, the myth of invincibility is gone. Japan's aura of unstoppable strength, cultivated since December 7, 1941, has been shattered. No fleet, no aircraft, no pilot is immune. And in the aftermath, every officer, sailor, and pilot understands that the war has entered a new, unpredictable phase. The realization settles like a shadow over the Pacific. The Americans are victorious, but the cost has been seared into memory. Every carrier launch, every dive, every explosion is etched into the minds of those who returned. And somewhere in the hearts of the Japanese survivors, a bitter seed is planted, a knowledge that the tide has turned and that nothing will ever feel secure again. The sun rises higher, bleaching the harbor in stark white. Ships creak under the heat. Sailors whisper names again. Somewhere, an aircraft engine coughs and dies. Silence presses against the docks like the calm before another storm. Victory is a price. History has been rewritten, and the Pacific waits. June 8, 1942. Pearl Harbor, morning fog lifting. The horizon glimmers, but the tension remains thick as oil on water. For the first time in months, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz walks the deck of USS Enterprise without binoculars. He doesn't need them. He knows every surviving plane, every pilot, every mechanic who returned. Each step echoes against steel, each sound a reminder what was lost and what was gained. The Americans have inflicted a devastating blow on the Imperial Navy, but they are not naive. They know the enemy will not vanish. Briefings convene in Hangar Bay, voices low, maps spread across tables. Naval officers trace arrows over the Pacific, connecting Midway, the Marshall Islands, and the Solomon Islands. Each arrow represents potential movement, potential death, potential victory. Every scenario is weighed, debated, argued. The men in the room carry the ghosts of lost squadrons in every gesture, every pause. Across the Pacific, Japanese high command reels. Admiral Yamamoto, aboard Yamato, considers the implications of losing 4 carriers in a single morning. The calculations that once promised conquest now demand restraint. Plans for Midway are abandoned, offensive operations suspended. The initiative, once held tightly, has slipped from their grasp. Confidence gives way to caution, and caution breeds hesitation, an unfamiliar concept in a Navy trained to strike decisively. Meanwhile, surviving Japanese pilots and crew attempt to salvage what they can. Scattered destroyers regroup with survivors in the carriers, hauling men from the sea, salvaging aircraft where possible, patching hulls, and reassessing supplies. Morale is fragile. Discipline must be enforced through sheer force of will. Every officer understands the stakes. Japan cannot replace these men or their experience. A mistake now could be fatal. Back on the American side, the mood is different but no less heavy. Pilots clean rifles, check engines, inspect every bolt. Deck crews scrub the salt and blood from the carriers, but it never fully disappears. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey walks along the deck, helmet under arm, eyes fixed on the water where his friends fell. Every man knows Midway was a gamble, executed by instinct, courage, and chance. And it worked. By midday, the reality sets in across the fleet. The Pacific is no longer an open highway for Japanese carriers. The initiative has shifted. Every American captain, from Enterprise to Hornet to Yorktown, understands that Midway was more than a battle. It is a turning tide. Strategy, previously reactive, now has room to breathe. Where once the Americans were surviving, now they can strike. And yet, victory comes with a weight no metal can carry. Pilots from torpedo squadrons who survive remember the loss of comrades, the screams of burning men, the endless water dotted with wreckage. Engineer, mechanics, and medics alike carry invisible scars, the imprint of adrenaline, smoke, and fire burned into memory. History is written not only in maps and reports, but in eyes hollowed by what they witnessed. As the sun dips toward afternoon, Nimitz surveys the harbor. The Pacific stretches ahead, vast and indifferent. Ships prepare to sail again. Pilots climb into cockpits. Bombs are rearmed. Lessons are learned in silence. The Americans know the fight is far from over. But for the first time, the enemy fears them. A psychological advantage that cannot be measured in tons of steel or numbers of aircraft has been seized. The day ends not with celebration, but with resolve. Every survivor carries a story, every observer a lesson, and every ship a reminder that the tide has shifted. What once seemed impossible, The destruction of 4 elite carriers has been accomplished, and yet, as night falls, the Pacific whispers its warning. The war is long, and the enemy, though bloodied, is far from broken. June 10th, 1942. Pearl Harbor. Dawn light cutting through the morning mist. The harbor is alive again with activity. Ships moving, cranes swinging, sailors shouting. But beneath the surface, a quiet reverence persists. The carriers have returned, battered and burned, are symbols not just of survival, but of a turning point that no one aboard could have predicted. Every man who steps onto deck feels in his bones. Midway is more than a battle. It is the moment the Pacific War changed course. Admiral Nimitz stands on USS Enterprise's bridge, eyes scanning the water that stretches endlessly. He does not speak aloud, but every line of his face tells a story. Losses have been heavy, yes. Entire torpedo squadrons gone. Friends, comrades, heroes buried at sea. But the strategic impact is undeniable. 4 Japanese fleet carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, destroyed in one morning. The balance of naval power in the Pacific has shifted irrevocably. In Washington, intelligence officers pore over battle reports. Maps are redrawn, strategies rewritten. For the first time, planners can envision a sustained offensive. Guadalcanal, the Solomons, the Marshalls, all become attainable objectives. Midway proves that the Imperial Navy is not invincible, and with this knowledge, American confidence grows, calculated and resolute. Back on the carriers, pilots who survive sit quietly in empty cockpits. Engines hum as if mourning. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey leans against the fuselage of his Dauntless, helmet tucked under his arm, staring at the endless horizon. He can still see the smoke rising from the Japanese carriers, feel the heat of fire, hear the screams of those who never returned. A single morning has burned its story into memory, indelible and raw. The Japanese Navy, meanwhile, scrambles to regroup. Yamamoto calculates, adjusts, plans. But the losses cannot be replaced. Carrier strength, elite air crews, experience, gone. Morale teeters on the edge, awareness of vulnerability spreading through the ranks. The myth of invincibility is broken. The war, once thought nearly won, is suddenly a defensive struggle. The tide has turned. Across the Pacific, ordinary sailors and airmen understand in different ways. Those who survive Midway know instinct and timing can equal strategy. They know courage can tip the scales, but the cost is personal, brutal, and unforgiving. Heroism is measured not in medals, but in the faces of men lost and the silent gratitude of those who return. The broader world will never fully grasp the drama, the chaos, or the human calculus of Midway. Historians will debate tactics, industrial output, and intelligence for decades. But for those who were there, the memory is immediate. The roar of engines, the flash of bombs, the water turning black with fire and blood, and the sudden, incomprehensible emptiness where a proud fleet once sailed. Midway becomes a symbol, not just of victory, but of resilience, of audacity, of a war fought across an ocean where the smallest decisions, the split-second instincts, and the bravery of individual men reshaped the course of history. The Americans proved they were not soft. They proved they could strike decisively. They proved that empires, however mighty, can fall in the span of a morning. As the sun rises higher, glinting off the repaired carriers in the calm sea, a quiet sense of purpose settles over the fleet. The Pacific, vast and indifferent, will continue to test them. But from the fires and ashes of Midway, the Americans carry more than weapons. They carry certainty. The initiative has shifted. The war can be won. And somewhere across the ocean, the ghosts of Midway's lost pilots hover. Silent witnesses, a reminder of sacrifice, courage, and the price of changing history.